Welcome to A Case of the Mondays, a podcast by 3R Strategy. We are a pay and reward consultancy supporting organisations of all sizes and sectors to take a fair and equitable approach to pay, communicated clearly and honestly to employees. In this podcast, we invite experts to discuss some of the most pressing issues in the world of HR, culture and leadership. We're keen to explore how we can all work to overcome and navigate these challenges. So, tune in to explore how you could create an environment where people don't just have to come to work, but want to.
Thanks for joining another episode of A Case of the Mondays. I'm your podcast host, Ramiz Kaleem, founder and director of 3R Strategy and author of Case of the Mondays, How to Attract and Retain Talent Through Pay Transparency. I'm joined today by Claire Cathcart, who is the founder of Elevate. With a career spanning over 15 years, Claire started her career in the security industry before moving to leisure, utilities, and telecoms. In more recent years, Claire spent time with scaling startup businesses before deciding to take the leap and create her own business. Claire now spends time supporting HR professionals with their personal development, delivering workshops, and providing a thriving community where people can ask questions and be supported on a daily basis. Alongside this, her strategic HR program has been hugely popular through 2024, helping people to move from operational HR to strategic HR. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the challenges HR professionals face in their career progression and discover practical strategies to help them thrive in their roles and advance their careers. Welcome to the podcast, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to speaking to you today because you took the step of setting up your own business, which is also something that I did quite a few years ago. And I think another thing that we have in common is, so you're building an HR community to provide development and support to HR professionals. We're also doing something similar, but we're very focused only on pay as something. So we have our Pay and Reward Academy to support people with their HR career. But there's so many things in HR, from recruitment to learning and development, talent, employment law, all of these different areas, and now you have increasingly other things like well-being, neurodiversity. So there's so many things that HR professionals are looking for. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and what led you to create this HR community and Elevate?
Yeah, of course. I think like many people, I fell into HR. I had originally done a degree in media and TV production. I wanted to be a TV director, decided that wasn't for me, and then landed myself a HR administrator job. And I realised quite quickly that HR was a profession that I really wanted to take seriously. The variety, the kind of things that you get involved in, I loved it from the beginning. So started out as a HR administrator for a security company, which was very heavy ER, which was great, a great learning experience for me. I then moved to an organisation called Impellum Group. So they are a parent company for lots of different companies, and I was responsible for providing advisory services to security company, cleaning company, recruitment consultancy. So it's really, really varied and again, heavy ER. So the first few years of my HR career were ER focused. And then I moved to TUI, so the holiday company. And this is where I actually spent again the first few years as a HR advisor, but this is where I moved from operational HR into that strategic space. I was able to take that leap from being advisor to business partner. And I was very lucky that I worked for an organisation that was heavily focused on performance, development, growth, and really investing in their staff. So I had an amazing mentor. My line manager was super supportive. And I just had lots of opportunities and exposure to different things in HR. So a great experience. working at TUI. I then moved, I relocated. Actually, I wouldn't have left that job had I not relocated down to the South Coast. And I joined EDF Energy. Very different culture, very different business, different industry. So I stayed there for 3 years. And then I was headhunted, actually. I wasn't really looking for another role. And there's a telecoms company that was looking to set up a HR team. They had a couple of coordinators, but they really wanted to have a HR function. So I had a great time there, actually, building the team. I think we grew it to a team of 8 before I left. And yeah, just putting in processes and initiatives that they just hadn't had exposure to before. And then following that, I did a couple of kind of fixed term contracts, maternity covers, and I think I was starting to get itchy feet at that point. I knew I was working for different organizations, but lots of people were reaching out to me on LinkedIn. They were asking for help. I could see the problems in the HR community. So I quit my job and started a business. Brave or reckless, I'm not sure at the time, but yeah, I made that decision. So yeah, it's been quite a journey to get here, but I'm absolutely passionate about HR.
Did you see that there were any gaps in HR development or HR support that in particular led you to setting up Elevate? Or did you, for example, have the development and support that you needed? I know you mentioned your first line manager was really supportive, but in your other roles, did you feel that there was lack of support and a HR community that you found yourself that led you to create this?
I think the theme that kept coming through were people kept saying to me, I'm feeling really lost in my career. And when people are saying I'm feeling really lost in their career, it means that they have no direction. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what their next role is. They don't know what that step up actually looks like. And typically it means that they're not having those career conversations, those development conversations with their line manager. So the piece that was missing is the support internally that is making those people feel lost. And I was very lucky that I had an amazing mentor and manager when I worked at TUI, when I was kind of making that transition to the business partnering space. So I think for me, that's the key thing, that their line managers aren't having the conversations with them. And when I say to people, well, when I meet them and I start talking to them about Elevate and the Elevate Hub and the community, I say, do you have a personal development plan in place? And I would say over 90%, 95% say they don't have a personal development plan. And people in the membership are probably bored of hearing me talk about it, because I know it's so important to have a personal development plan. But then as those conversations progress, it's evident that they don't know what to put on a personal development plan. They don't know the areas that they should be focusing on. They don't know what that next role looks like. They just don't have that guidance. So this is where Elevate is supporting people. This is where I can personally support people. I can talk to people about the types of roles they could move into. I have lots of conversations about what's the difference between a HR manager and a HR business partner. What's the difference between managing people and partnering the business? So how do I know if I'm going to enjoy one over the other? So those career conversations, really understanding people's aspirations, their strengths, what they kind of want to achieve, that's where we're helping people. I think that's just been a gap in HR generally, unfortunately. But yeah, very, very common.
And you said that I think in your last role, you were starting to get contacted by a lot of people on LinkedIn and a lot of HR professionals. What do you think were the most common challenges or obstacles being faced by those HR professionals that were getting in touch with you? Was it about their careers, or were there other challenges?
Yeah, lots of stuff about their career. Many requests about CV rewrites, actually. And I think this was a blocker for a lot of people in taking that leap and making that step into their next role. I see lots of CVs that are, I guess, in need of rewriting. With people in HR are not very good at selling themselves generally. And I can say that sitting here because I've seen a lot of HR CVs, just not very good at selling themselves. And when I say to people, okay, so have you got experience in X, Y, or Z? Oh yeah, I've done that and lots of experience in that area. Well, why didn't you put it on your CV then? Like, oh, I didn't know it was relevant. Um, so career moves is definitely the biggie. Feeling lost. Sadly, actually, in 2024, I had lots of people reach out to me about being made redundant. So I think previous to that, we were seeing lots of organisations going through redundancy programs, but with people in the business, and HR were leading those programs. So I think in 2024, we saw more HR people being made redundant, which is scary for people, right? So they were the common things that people are reaching out to me about.
And how long ago was it that you quit your job and set up Elevate?
So it would have been August 2023. I did actually start looking for a new job, and you just realise your heart's not in it at all. I want to go and do something else. So September 2023, I was looking for a new job, and then October, I decided to register my business. I just went all in, and then I spent a month writing the course, How to Become a Strategic HR Partner. So giving people actionable insights, things that they can take away and actually implement in their roles. I spent a month writing the course, and then I launched the membership in January 2024, so just over a year ago.
Okay. And so I guess it's still relatively new,
Yeah.
or it hasn't been that long since you quit your job.
Yeah.
But do you think that within that year or year and a half, or even within the last few years, that that HR has evolved, and are there new skills, for example, that you think HR professionals now need to develop to be successful in their careers with the way the world of work, with remote working, hybrid working, and the world of HR is changing?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I can't not talk about AI. It's here to stay, and I think it has the possibility to absolutely transform HR as a function. What I am seeing, however, is a real reluctance from HR people to embrace AI and new technology. I think the reason for that is maybe some concern around, will it take my job? Will it start to do things that I should be doing? But also just some nervousness around new technology. How does it work from a kind of GDPR perspective? Is it okay for me to put company information into it? So lots of nervousness around AI. I do honestly believe, though, that HR professionals need to be embracing the technology, because I'm using it all the time. I'm sure people listening are using AI a lot now. It can start to take on activities that, the more administrative tasks, write policies, letters, draft documentation for us that before we would have spent hours doing. It will now deliver it in minutes for us. So I think from that perspective, it's definitely going to help us. We will still have jobs because we are people, we are working with people, and I don't think AI has quite taken over that human element and that human emotion just yet. So I think from a HR perspective, still lots for us to be doing. But I think in the next couple of years, we need to see HR teams embracing AI a lot more than we have done. In terms of kind of other skills that HR professionals need, I think the employee landscape is changing. The employees are now expecting more from us. You talked about well-being at the start of the podcast. Well-being, I think, has definitely ramped up in terms of the expectations from employees. They are expecting more from their employer. I think we're going to be having the office versus hybrid versus fully remote debate for a number of years, but I don't think I have spoken to anyone in the last 18 months that wants to work in the office 5 days a week. And we are seeing more and more companies mandating that people do return to the office. I think we've seen
Yeah.
Dell, I think we've seen Amazon, there's different companies. But I'm not seeing people that actually want to do that. I will caveat that with, I think if you are early in your HR career, being in the office is a great thing. So you can learn from people, you can hear the conversations, you will really fast track your development. So I think being in the office has its place, but 5 days a week. So I think the employee landscape is definitely challenging HR in a different way, whether that's from a retention perspective, trying to attract new people, providing development. I think there's an organisation, was it Dell? He said that you wouldn't be promoted if you weren't in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah, I
So
remember seeing that. I'm not sure if it was Dell. It might have been Dell, but I definitely remember seeing that your chances of promotion, or in fact, you won't get promoted if you don't come
yeah,
into the office.
yeah. So huge challenges for HR people.
Yeah, it's interesting on AI because I do remember reading some research and the uptake on AI within organizations. And I remember seeing the percentage, and then I looked at the HR percentage, and it was so much lower than everyone else. And I think I agree. It is partly down to that. Um, People feeling like, oh, our jobs are going to be, if we can find ways to do this quicker, our jobs are going to go. But I guess there must also be an element of risk, and people feeling like, oh, this is all confidential data, employee data that we don't necessarily want to put into. Um, but we also look at AI, and I think it's definitely something that is going to increase. I think it's more the larger organizations. I went to a conference last year, and it was admittedly it was Microsoft, and they would you would hope that they use AI, but we have they were talking about how they're starting to use AI for a lot of their HR processes. I think it's the smaller organizations maybe where there's, I guess, less education around AI, that there might be reluctance.
Yeah, I think HR need to be assured by the IT teams
Yeah.
that there are the correct, permissions in place, all of that security around it. And I think if someone came to the HR team and said, it's all good, we have put the boundaries in place,
Mm.
we've set it up, so you can now input company data into this software, HR will start to do that. So I think there's some collaboration that needs to happen within the business and HR. I really want to see AI being adopted by HR professionals much more in the coming years.
You mentioned that you have a course, and then you helped last year a lot of people move from an operational HR role to a strategic HR role. Could you share some of the practical ways that HR professionals who are looking to develop more of a strategic mindset, or looking to shift away from, like you mentioned earlier, like for example, um, an HR operational role into a business partnering or a strategic role, what are some of the practical ways that they could do this?
I think the first step is to really understand, what do we mean by strategy? And there's lots of feedback from the business, you need to be more strategic, or I want to move into a strategic role. And the question is, well, what does that actually look like? So one of the first things I did when I was a HR advisor was I went out and spoke to HR business partners. What does your role look like? What do you do day to day? What kind of conversations are you having? Read job descriptions. There's profession maps out there, capability frameworks. I think you really have to understand the role that you're potentially wanting to move into. And I think once you've got that understanding, it is much easier to then work on the capabilities that you need to put into your personal development plan. So, one of the things that you typically tend to do a lot when you're working in a strategic role is work with your stakeholders much more closely. So, if I were to say to you, you need to improve your stakeholder management, what does that even look like? What does
Hmm.
stakeholder management mean? Well, it means, are you really clear on who your stakeholders are? Do you have regular conversations with them? Do you have an agenda? Are you adding value to that conversation on a regular basis? So this is just one point of being a HR business partner, and it can take time to build something like that. There are other capabilities when you're working strategically around things like data, reporting, board reports. So asking yourself questions like, well, how good am I at analysing data? Or do you ever see data? Do you get data? Do you spend time looking at data? Do you get reports sent to you? Are you asking questions about it? Typically, the answer when you're in an operational role is no, I am not spending time looking at things like data proactively because I just don't have enough hours in the day. So I think once you understand what is required of a strategic HR partner role, you can then start to fill in the gaps and put those things on your PDP. But I guess the biggest tip that people can take away is be proactive with your development. No one is going to care more about your career than you. So if you aren't taking time to create your PDP, to ask those questions and have the conversations, who else is going to do that for you? So, take ownership, take control of your progression and your career development. And once you do that, you'll start to take baby steps weekly, monthly, and before you know it, you're ready to take on that next role.
And I guess you made a good point around first understanding what strategy really means, because I guess it's a personal preference as well, because there might be some people that feel that an operational HR role is what suits them and that's what they want to stick with. So it doesn't necessarily mean we should all be switching or aspiring to be in a strategic role, because it might not suit the skills that people have or what interests them. So do you ever have that conversation with people, and how would you identify from someone that, or have that conversation, say, it feels like an operational HR role is more suited to you and you may not enjoy a strategic role?
I've had that conversation quite a few times, actually, probably in the last few weeks as well, as we start the new year and people are focusing more on their PDPs within the Elevate Hub. And it's a difficult question to ask, answer, because people will have their own aspirations, know their own strengths, their own desires. So the advice that I give people is understand the roles in HR so you can get an idea of what direction you want to go in. So, for example, the question that comes up, do I want to be a HR manager? Do I want to go down the business partner route? Well, the obvious one with the HR manager role, obviously more operational, is that you've got people management responsibility, which you don't typically have in that VP role. So how do you feel about managing people and having one-to-ones and talking about their development? From a personal perspective, I had very little interest in managing people at that stage of my career. I wanted to know more about the business side of things. So in the operational HR manager role, you are not as close to the business. You're probably making fewer commercial decisions, and that's fine. That's what's expected of you in your role. So if you understand the requirements of different roles within HR, you'll start to figure out where you want to go. There's actually someone in the Elevate Hub who, when I have these conversations, they're like, I don't know if I want to be a people manager. I don't know if I want to work more in the business. And that's fine. I think you then start to look at what feedback have I had? Where are my areas for development? Let me focus on those things, the things that I can do to help me be the best that I can be in my current job. And at some point, it will become clearer where you want to move to. So, yeah, I mean, operational roles are definitely better for some people, and some people want to move into the strategic world. I think it's just personal preference.
Another challenge that I think a lot of HR people face is feeling undervalued by not I think personally, but as a role, as a function within an organization, and feeling like they can't really have an impact because they're just being asked to do the minimum required from a legislative perspective or from an operational perspective. So is this something you speak to HR professionals about, and how do you effectively demonstrate to the senior leadership team the value that you can add or the impact that you can have as a HR professional?
I hear this a lot, unfortunately. It is a common problem. And I think people in the business don't always understand the role of HR and the value that they can add. And why would they? They haven't worked in HR, they haven't worked in that kind of role, and they don't understand the nuances around it. But what we can do, I think, as HR professionals is really think about how we demonstrate the value that we add. We have to speak their language. So the business leaders typically, I'm broad brush stereotyping business leaders now, typically focused on the commercial side of the business. How are we making money? How are we saving money? And are we, as HR professionals, demonstrating the value in a way that the business will value and appreciate? So I think there's, unfortunately, in HR, when you're working with people, there are lots of things that are more intangible that you can't measure, but there are things that you can measure and demonstrate the value of. So have a look at the metrics. What KPIs are you tracking from a HR perspective? Things around recruitment, very easy to measure, cost per hire, time per hire. How, are we getting people into the business with the right capabilities and skill sets? And then at the other end of the journey, who's leaving? How much is it costing us when we're turning over large numbers of people? So I think to demonstrate the value to the business, we need to speak their language and look at our metrics. I think they're the key things. And I think also, actually, I'll add a third thing. Ask them what they want to see. What do you expect from a HR function? And if it's purely admin, you've got some work to be doing with that business leader. But ask them what they want to be seeing from a HR perspective.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because it's we don't want to make assumptions and based on those assumptions doing things which actually they're not looking for us to do. So as we're discussing challenges for HR professionals, another one that I can think of, and sometimes you see posts on LinkedIn or don't speak to your HR reps because they're on the side of the business, or they don't have your best interests. And it's very challenging for HR professionals because at times you're facing employees that might not think that you're working in their best interest, and you have senior leaders that are thinking, well, I'm not sure you're thinking commercially or you're thinking about the business, you're just thinking about the employees. So how do you advise HR professionals to balance those two things, balancing being an advocate for employees and looking after their fairness and well-being, but at the same time maintaining that commercial awareness of helping the organization succeed?
I think it's a very difficult position for HR people, balancing the business, the commercial side of it, and the employees. I think the argument, I've seen lots of debates online around this. HR are paid by the business, so they must be on the side of the business, so they're not going to treat us fairly. I think the reality is, and I'm probably speaking for most HR professionals, that we will undertake what the business asks us to do. If there needs to be a restructure, we will do it. If there needs to be a disciplinary or an investigation, we will do it. Absolutely. That's, we are an employee of the organisation. But on the flip side of that, and again, speaking from my own perspective, but I'm sure many HR people feel the same, that we are there for the employee from the perspective that we will always ensure people are treated fairly, consistently, treated with respect, and are taken through the process, whatever process that may be, in the best way possible. Can we save everyone's jobs, for example? No, we can't. We physically can't do that, but we can ensure people receive the correct payments, they're paid on time, they have fair conversations and taken through the process. So there's absolutely a fine balance. But I think if you just continue to demonstrate that and show in your actions that you will do what the business asks you to do, but you will take people through a fair process, people will start to see that, do you know what? HR aren't so bad after all. They do actually care about us because they're treating us in the right way.
Yeah, it always makes me laugh when I see posts from employees, oh, HR is on the side of the business, they get paid by the business. You also get paid by the business as an employee, so that's no different from HR. And in the same way that that employee or each employee has to do their role, HR also have to do their role. And I agree. I think it's a very difficult position, but ultimately, like you said, it's about ensuring fairness. And it's do you have any suggestions for example, HR professionals on how they can work with the employees to demonstrate fairness, or demonstrate that yes, we can't solve all your problems, but we are trying to do our best to work with you?
I think things like engagement surveys and giving the employees a voice, actually, whether that's a survey or a different kind of forum, employee network, whatever it needs to be, I think having mechanisms in place to make employees feel heard, share their thoughts, share their opinions, and then taking action on some of those things, I think that really demonstrates that, actually, not just from a HR perspective, from an organisation perspective, that we do care about you. We care about how you're feeling in the workplace. We care about your ideas, your um, your suggestions for new ideas. We genuinely care. And I've worked for lots of organisations that do genuinely care. Too, we had an employee voice forum. I've worked in many organisations that send out engagement surveys, and they take action on those things. So where people in one organisation were saying there weren't opportunities for progression, or we didn't look at talent, we actually introduced a talent program to take people through, and we recognise there are high potential people. So there are lots of things that organisations are doing. I think typically the conversation comes up around HR on the side of the business and not on the side of the employee when there is, I'll call it conflict, whether there's a redundancy coming up or there's a disciplinary, or someone is personally in that moment feeling uncomfortable and aggrieved with the organisations. I think that's where those comments come from. But typically, I have seen lots of organisations that genuinely care. I think there's other things that we can do, like go back to wellbeing. So wellbeing initiatives definitely becoming more common, more popular. Employees are requesting more initiatives around wellbeing. But I think all of these things show that we, as a business, are investing in them, and we genuinely care about their health and well-being. So yeah, lots of different things that businesses can do and HR can do. It's definitely not just all commercial and all about the business. We are trying to put lots of things in place that will benefit the employees as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really like your point around giving the employees a voice, because we can often think of communications as, oh, we need to put out all this information for employees, but communication is a two-way process. And as we communicate, we need to also get the response and the feedback and that voice from employees. And you mentioned engagement surveys, and I've also seen where engagement surveys can actually have a negative impact, because we do engagement surveys and employees give up their time and hours and complete that survey, and then nothing happens. And everyone's just thinking, well, why did you ask me for my opinion if you're not going to do anything about it? So it's it's an ongoing dialogue. I think, like you said, it's giving them the voice and not just seeing it as a once or twice a year process where we just put out information and keep them informed.
There's no point doing an engagement survey if you're going to do nothing with the results. For sure. People need to feel like they're being listened to, not just that they have a voice and that they can share their opinions, but they need to feel heard. And you demonstrate that by responding to them and saying, hey, you told us this, so this is what we're going to do for you. So yeah, absolutely. Just, it's almost detrimental to do a survey if you're not going to follow up with the actions afterwards.
Something that I tend to see a lot, and I don't know if because my network is mostly HR or whether this tends to happen a lot more within HR, but you tend to hear a lot about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And whether, particularly when people are talking about developing their HR careers, feeling like, whether they're ready to take that next step or, for example, move to a strategic role. What's your experience in this? Do you tend to hear a lot of people talking about imposter syndrome? And if so, what advice do you give them to try and overcome this?
Yes, I hear this a lot, whether we're calling it just lacking in confidence, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome is all the same thing. And I think this is very common across HR. And I've had many conversations with people around they're not ready to apply for a new role or, step into that space. I'm not quite ready. And yeah, I think there's lots of things that we can start to do. I think actually on my course, we have a limiting beliefs module because it's so common. It's something that people need to tackle. So the first thing is identifying the areas where you feel less confident. So we may describe ourselves as being a not confident person. I lack confidence as a HR individual. And I think that's a dangerous game to just, I guess, put the label across every element of what you do, because you may be very confident in pulling together board reports, but you may lack confidence in delivering presentations. So I think if you can start to identify key areas where you feel like you're lacking in confidence or the imposter is coming in, you can then start to take action. So if, for example, I feel like I lack confidence in presenting to people, I need to put that on my personal development plan. And guess what you're doing? You're going to be presenting a lot more to try and overcome that. There might be things like data. If you have a mental block with numbers, you're not very good with Excel, get yourself an Excel course. And then when you start to build your capability in those areas, I think with capability comes confidence. If you have a belief that you are able to do something well, you will have confidence in that area. So I think it's actually breaking it down into different areas of your life or your role where you're struggling and start to take action in those areas.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, isn't it? Because we can often feel like we struggle with certain things and we just avoid doing them, and then it can be 5 years, 10 years, and you just still feel like, oh, I'm still struggling with this, but actually we haven't done anything about it in those 5 to 10 years. And one way of, I guess, overcoming this is to just I know it's difficult, but you just have to repeatedly do the things that you're uncomfortable with, and then eventually, I'm guessing, hoping that you become comfortable with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I use the example of presentations because when I was much younger, I lacked confidence in many areas, and I felt very uncomfortable doing presentations. I went to university, and what do they have you doing pretty much every other week? Delivering presentations. And I knew that I'd go red and blotchy and it would be a disaster. So I would wear roll necks, I'd put lots of makeup on because I knew how I would react to it. And I kept doing it and I kept doing it and I kept doing it. Even in the workplace, I knew it was going to be an issue. And people have said to me, can I be a business partner if I can't present to people? And my response is, you're going to have to start to learn, honestly, because you are going to find yourself in board meetings and presenting at town halls and various company meetings. So put yourself out there. It's going to feel difficult, but the more you do it, I promise you, it will become better. It does become easier. So that was just an example that I had. I just forced myself through it. I remember presenting to, I think it was 300 finance people, and I was practicing in front of the mirror the night before. I got through the presentation, the world didn't end, and I felt a shift. I was like, do you know what? Maybe I can do this. So yeah, identify the areas where you're lacking confidence and just go for it. Just keep practicing. And yeah, things will get better.
So there are two parts of developing an HR career. I think one is obviously developing your skills, your knowledge, and then I think it's also around having a support network around you. So, can you tell us a bit about? You obviously have your course that you've developed, and so you've got some guidance and training for people. But with Elevate HR, is there a support network, or do you have your members sort of, do they speak to each other, or how do they support each other?
Yes, a huge part of the Elevate Hub is the community, and people are very active in the chat rooms. So we have chat rooms that people can come into, ask questions, let us know about their day. We have a daily chat, how are you getting on? But we also have things like member check-ins, which is a virtual session twice a month where you can come in, there's no agenda, and say, hey, what's going on? What are your challenges this week? Have you got any questions? Do you need support with anything? So the HR community in the Elevate Hub have got lots of opportunities to talk to each other. I also see the analytics in the background, and I can see the percentage of private messages that are being sent within the community, and it's high. So I know that people will ask the question, hey, has anyone got a document around this or a policy on something else? And people are like, yeah, sure, I'll message you. Or I'm pulling together a performance management workshop. Can anyone help me with some ideas? I know people are messaging each other. So the community element of it is so important. And as part of, as you rightly say, developing as a HR professional, the support is really important. And I think that's because we need to learn from other people. Our learning is not just reading books and doing the CIPD qualification. We must learn from others. One of the members introduced me to a phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants. So people have done stuff before us, so why not learn from them to help us evolve and grow? So yeah, huge part of the Elevate Hub. And it's really lovely to see that people are supporting each other.
Yeah, that's great to see that you've got so many private messages, because it means people are giving up their time to provide support to other people. We've talked a lot about people developing their HR careers and what sort of support they need from others and training and development. But what about somebody who is looking to get their first job or start their HR career? Would you have any? And I think a lot of HR people you speak to, and it's the same with me, because I've been in reward for over 20 years, but never planned to get into reward, because when you're in university, don't even realize that pay and reward is a function on its own. So a lot of people tend to fall into HR, but I'm sure there are people that are thinking, I want my first job to be HR. And so if there is someone who is thinking that, what advice would you give them?
I have spoken to a couple of rare individuals that did HR qualifications as their initial degree and said I wanted to get into HR. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy. The HR market is incredibly difficult at the moment. I think if you do have qualifications in HR, it will definitely stand you in good stead. So if you have gone to university, gotten your degree, or even CIPD level 3, quite honestly, if you've got some form of qualification in HR, it will help you. If you don't have a qualification and you've decided that you want to move into HR, the advice that I give to people is that look at your current organisation that you're working in, ask if there are opportunities to shadow, potentially move across at some point in the future, because they will know you as an individual. They'll know your strengths, they'll know your personality, and you'll be more likely to be given an opportunity, as opposed to applying for HR roles with no HR experience and no qualification, and they don't know you. That's a tough gig. So yeah, I think if you have qualifications, definitely go for them. But yeah, if not, try and find something where you're currently working. But yeah, it's not easy, as we all know.
Great. So thanks, Claire, for all of your advice and your tips and guidance for people looking to develop their HR career. I know you've probably been on lots of podcasts, and they you might get asked a question like your favorite book in those podcasts, but we have a slightly different question. And I'm going to ask you what your favorite film is and why.
This is always a difficult one because I'm not really much of a movie buff, and I don't really watch TV either.
Okay.
I tend to watch Disney films and Lucas, and that's probably it. But I have been asked this question before, and I think it's just something like there was that movie with Christina Aguilera, Burlesque, and she's one of my favourite singers. So a movie with Christina Aguilera singing, what could be better? So yeah, that was the answer I gave. And people listening to this will be rolling their eyes saying that is a terrible movie. There's better ones out there. But like I said, I'm not a movie buff at all. I think one of my favourite Disney films that I watch with Lucas is The Lion King. We love that one. So that we tend to watch that at least once a week, I think. So that's a very
Okay.
mum answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't really comment on your film because I haven't seen it. I am a bit of a movie buff, so I usually try and comment on the films, but that's not one I know anything about. Obviously, I know who Christina Aguilera is. But no, The Lion King. I actually went to see The Lion King in the theater a few weeks ago. So yeah, I haven't seen the film for a long time, but yeah, I think that's a favorite for a lot of people.
We went to see, I think Mufasa has been released recently, so we went to see
Yes.
that one on Christmas Eve, so that was quite cool.
Okay, so would you recommend that?
If you like Disney films, yes.
Okay. Before I let you go, can you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they wanted to find out more about you or Elevate?
Absolutely. If you search for me on LinkedIn, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so drop me a message. My website's on there as well if you want to take a look around, but I'm always happy to speak to HR people that want to develop their careers. So yeah, just drop me a message. Happy to have a chat with you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Claire, for joining me today, for all your advice and tips, and sharing your film recommendations. And thanks everyone for listening, and we'll join you again for another episode of A Case of the Mondays. Thanks.
You've been listening to A Case of the Mondays. Feel free to share this episode with anyone you think might find it useful. Similarly, if you have any questions about what we've discussed today or would like to suggest a topic for future episodes, get in touch by emailing podcast@3r-strategy.com or head over to 3r-strategy.com to sign up to our mailing list for regular news and updates.